What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Steel to Stone channel. Thanks for checking back in with me. Hope everybody's having a great weekend so far. Man, it's a freaking mess where I live. I don't know about you guys, but it's been raining for like a week straight here, and it's that really annoying weather where it's right above freezing, but raining for days on end. So if it was just a couple degrees colder, we'd have a mound of snow outside, and instead we've got this wet, sloshy, cold mess every day with puddles everywhere, and just kind of annoying at this point. Be okay for a day or so, but it's lasted for a week now. And yeah, but anyways, on a lighter note, let's take a look at this beast, and I'll give you guys my initial thoughts while you're waiting on yours in the mail. I'm sure a lot of you are. And for those of you who don't know, this is the Spyderco Shaman with a ZWEAR PM blade and brown canvas micarta scale. And this is a sprint run, which is essentially from Spyderco a limited edition knife. And they did this exact model last year as a sprint run, and instead of the ZWEAR blade, it had a CrewWear blade, and it was highly sought after, sold out very quickly, and I guess they got a lot of requests to make another batch of those, but since it was a sprint run or a limited edition, they only do one batch normally, and so they did the next best thing, got a very similar steel in ZWEAR, and made the same knife again, so that's a really cool thing, and thank you, Spyderco, for doing that. That's pretty awesome that they try their best to give people what they want. So CrewWear and ZWEAR, like I said, very similar steels, and insert a picture here of the composition of each one so you guys can see it, and it's, like I said, almost identical but still a little bit different. And from what I can tell, what the steels offer is very good wear resistance, so really good edge retention, not quite up there comparable to the extremely wear resistant steels like K390 or Maximate, but somewhere in between that and probably S30V or somewhere around in there, somewhere right in the middle of those two. And from the test that I've seen on CrewWear, at least, the edge retention, it gets really good, like fine edge holding capability, so it'll hold that shaving sharp edge a lot longer than some other steels on the market. And that's sort of the thing that's always drawn me to CrewWear, as well as hearing about how well it sharpens and the edge that it takes. So being that this is a very similar steel, I'm pretty excited to try it out, because I've never actually owned a CrewWear knife, so this will be my first experience with a steel like that. And I sort of think that this is the perfect knife to put it on. It just seems like a really well built, really tough, sort of hard use design, and considering that ZWEAR and CrewWear is very tough and stable at the edge as well, seems like the perfect choice for it. And it's also relatively stain resistant for a tool steel. Not quite as good as D2, but better than say M4 or K390 even. So a really good user steel, I think, overall, and so I'm excited to try it out. So ZWEAR is a steel created by a company called ZAP, and it's been around the industry for many years, but not something you normally see on folding knives, especially production folding knives. But it's a steel you hear a lot of custom makers use and hobbyist makers, and I've heard nothing but good things about it so far, so I'm excited to try it out. And I saw a video a couple months ago from a company. What was that place? Miller Bros Blades, I think is the name of it, and they have a YouTube channel, and they uploaded this video of a knife that they made, one of the models they make. It's called the M8, and it's a huge freaking knife. It's got like a 1/4 inch thick blade, and I guess pretty thick geometry behind the edge, but they took that knife and took a 1/4 inch plate of steel and put it in a vise and hammered that ZWEAR blade through that piece of steel about 1.5 inches, and didn't seem to take a whole lot of damage. So I was pretty impressed with that, and I'll leave a link in the description if I remember, so you guys can check that out. But definitely excited to try the steel out, and I wanted to compare this to the PM2, because as soon as I got it out of the box, it just felt abnormally large to me. Knowing that it was about the same length as a PM2, I was really surprised at how big it felt in the hand. So I wanted to take a quick look at the two together and see what the differences were between them. And from what I can tell, the Shaman is a little bit heavier, a little over an ounce heavier. You can see the scale stock thickness, or the handle thickness, is almost 100 thousandths wider on the Shaman, as well as it's a good bit taller overall from the spine to the edge. So just a beefier knife overall. And the blade stock thickness is also the same on the two, 145 thousandths, but you can see the PM2's got much more distal taper on it and a much thinner tip than the Shaman. So I feel like everything that they did with the Shaman here in terms of the design and the way that it's built was just intended to be used hard as a work knife, and something you could really, sort of beat on and just not really worry too much about, and it's going to hold up pretty well for you. So it's about 23 thousandths behind the edge and a little over 30 at the tip. So definitely almost everything that they did was intended to be used hard and not have to concern yourself too much with. And that's something that a lot of makers do with hard use or more hard use style designs, is they thicken them up as they get towards the tip. The Mannix is the same way. The American Lawman was like that. But the PM2 and the Para 3, they keep the same geometry from the plunge grind to the tip behind the edge. So yeah, definitely can appreciate the way that this was well thought out and designed. And probably my favorite thing about it, aside from the steel, is just the scale in general. Not only the design and the way it's machined, but just the brown micarta. I think it looks really good on this model. It feels really good in the hand. They left a good bit of texture on the scales, and just a really good job with the handle overall, I feel like. So let's take a good hard look at the blade. Nice satin finish, high flat grind, sort of a drop point style blade. They've lightly deburred the edge of the hole and the spine. Really good looking satin finish on the spine, and some nice sort of sharp jimping and a generous spot of it that holds your thumb really well, and some in the forward finger choil there. And really square looking plunge grind, so you can sharpen it all the way back if you want to with no problems. And this is one of my favorite things about this as well. It doesn't have that hump like a lot of Spydercos around the hole, so you can really wrap your hand around this and have a lot of control over this knife, and especially with that forward finger choil. And I just feel like it's sort of really well executed for hard use intent. So decent job with the blade, but there are a couple things I want to talk about with the execution of it towards the end of the video. And yeah, so that jimping works really well, and just a really good job with this design, I think. And then taking a look at the micarta scale, you can see how well it's done. And 4-position pocket clip on here, T10 pivot screw, T8 body screws, and T6 pocket clip screws, with a nice stainless satin finished back spacer and a generous lanyard hole through the back of the clip there. And this doesn't carry super deep in the pocket. I'm using Spyderco's sort of standard spoon clip that they use on a lot of different models, and I honestly don't mind that too much on this particular model or the PM2, because the handles are pretty long and you got plenty of knives inside your pocket, so I don't feel like it carries too shallow. And with this clip in particular, it's very strong and stout and holds the knife in your pocket really well. And I like having that little spot at the end of the handle where you can pull the knife out of your pocket, put it back in your pocket pretty easily. So I can appreciate that clip on this particular model, although I wouldn't mind a deep carry clip as well. So compression lock on here with nested stainless liners. They've been lightly relieved to save some weight. Weighs 4.89 ounces, and I have heard of some people complain about this being a compression lock on this hard use design, and I could see an argument for that, but honestly I don't think it's going to be too big of an issue. I think regardless of what type of lock you're using, the way that the scale is made matters more than really anything else. And if you're really bearing down on a knife, either way, if there's a gap between the scales and the back, you're going to feel that in your hand no matter what. So whether it's a liner lock or sometimes even a backlock. If the backlock's not perfectly aligned with the rest of the handle, you can feel it in your hand during hard use tasks. So I don't mind this being a compression lock, and I just really like the compression lock overall, and I think it's fine on this particular model, although that nub is sort of annoying when the blade closes, but I've sort of gotten used to it already, I think, and I don't mind that either, although I may end up grinding it off. I'm not sure yet. But yeah, so there is another hot spot with the clip and the position that it's in, for me at least personally. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the design, and I think it was designed really well. I really like this knife, the overall aesthetic of it, and just the way that it's built in general. I think it's a really good model. Alright, so now that we've looked at all the good things, let's look at a couple of the quality control issues that I've found with this. So, number one, the tip on the show side is upswept or ground in too far and doesn't match the rest of the bevel and is uneven from side to side. And that seems to be a common issue from the Golden, Colorado factory on several different models that I've seen over the past year or so. And then looking at the other side of the tip, there was some discoloration there, and you can see it up close and personal right here coming up. So not honestly sure what that is. I mean, it could be a stain, it could be corrosion, or it could be overheated. I honestly don't know exactly what that is. And you hear a lot in the community nowadays about burnt or fatigued steel from the factory sharpenings and grinding. And I think that's absolutely a thing and an issue that has been pretty well proven at this point by different cut testers. But I think fatigued steel is more of an issue than actual burnt steel is. I think burnt steel is a lot less common than people think it is, because I mean, you have to really heat up the steel to a high temperature in a lot of cases in order to actually soften it. So from my understanding, the way that it works, and you guys can look this up for yourself, but essentially you would have to exceed the temperature that the knife was originally tempered at during the heat treat process in order to soften it. So I have no idea how this was heat treated, if it was tempered at 400 degrees or 1000 degrees or somewhere in between, but either way you'd have to exceed that 400 degree mark or that 1000 degree mark in order to soften it. So yeah, but hopefully that's not even what it is. Hopefully it's just rust or patina. Either way, though, that's definitely not something you want to see out of the box for this knife being as highly anticipated as it is and as expensive as it is. That's not something you want to see. And then the last thing was the action. So there was a good bit of side-to-side play out of the box with this knife that I didn't originally notice. And I tried to lightly snug down the pivot screws. They were really loose, and it just locked the blade down completely. So I ended up taking the knife apart, and when I got it apart, I started looking at the liners on the inside of the scales, and there were a lot of burrs and slag left over, I guess you could call it, from where they cut out the liners with the laser or whatever they use. And here's some up close and personal pictures so you guys can see it, what I'm talking about. And you can see all those burr marks or slag marks left over from the laser, and I definitely felt like that was probably affecting the action. So I ended up taking an impact and a countersink bit and lightly chamfering those holes on the insides of the liners and stoning everything back real smooth, and was able to get a pretty good action out of the knife. So I wrenched down the clip side pivot screw really tight and snugged the show side pivot screw down and put some KPL and Loctite on the pivot, and yeah, was able to get it to drop close with no blade play. So I was pretty happy with that. But several different things on this that you definitely don't want to see on a $200 knife. It just kind of disappointing. But I am happy with the knife overall and excited to have it try out the model and the steel as well. And I still think it's worth owning, even if you have to deal with those couple minor annoyances. But nonetheless, I'd love to see a lot of these American companies do a little bit better job with their quality control. So thanks for watching, guys, and we will see you next time.